Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. I am your host, Lonnie Jones. My wife Jackie and I moved to the city of Huntsville in 1986 for me to be a youth and family minister. I have been a minister since 1980. I have served in this community as a police chaplain assigned to a SWAT team since 1992, and I've been in private practice as a licensed professional counselor since 1998. I'm also an adventure educator and an avid outdoorsman. I dabble in rock climbing and I goof around with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Our life has been full of many wonderful experiences and some just outright adventures. I used to write about those things in a little church bulletin article. So now instead of asking you to read those things, we're just going to talk about them in our podcast. And as we talk about them, we're going to talk about the facts. The facts lead to concepts, and the concepts lead to application. One caveat about the facts is, for the most part, we're going to tell you the facts just as they happened. But every now and then, we're going to tell you the way other people have told us they remember it happening with a little bit of embellishment. It's all good, clean fun and for educational purposes. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy Keeping Up with Jones. TKM Incorporated in Moss, Tennessee is a construction company that specializes in erosion control, seeding, and soil, hydroseeding, hydromulch, minor excavation, and silt fence. They also provide traffic control and construction signs. Their business is keeping people safe, but their passion, their mission, is they wish that all men could be saved. TKM has adopted the nickname the King's Men because as they serve you, they also serve the King. If they could provide any of their services for you, please contact them at 931-243-3958. That is 931-243-3958. Or you can contact them on the net at tkminc2001 at twlakes.net. That is tkminc2001 at twlakes.net. TKM Incorporated is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. Faulkner University announces a 60% tuition discount for members of the Church of Christ. Now, there are some guidelines. This 60% tuition reduction is applicable to adult undergraduate Bible degrees or graduate Bible degrees from the Curley Graduate School of Theology in the VP Black College of Biblical Studies. You must satisfy all admission requirements and maintain satisfactory academic progress. You must remain continuously enrolled, including summers, until the completion of the degree. You must provide a letter from an elder or minister, preferably on church letterhead, verifying that you're an active member of a Church of Christ congregation prior to your initial enrollment. This offer applies to adult undergraduate degrees such as biblical studies, youth and family ministry tracks, and it also includes graduate degrees. And those are the Master of Arts in Biblical Studies, the Master of Arts in Family Life Ministry, or a Master of Theology, and it also applies to the PhD in Biblical Studies. For undergraduate inquiries, please contact Adult Enrollment, 334-386-7140, 334-386-7140, or Adult Enrollment at Faulkner.edu. That is Adult Enrollment at Faulkner.edu. For graduate inquiries, please call 334-386-7539, 334-386-7539. Graduate enrollment at Faulkner.edu. That is graduate enrollment at Faulkner.edu. Faulkner University is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. It is not unusual for my daughter to call me on the phone, and it was not unusual for my daughter to call me from college. I answered the phone and was bombarded. Now, when she calls, she's usually torqued out to about 4,000 foot-pounds. There's never a, hello, how are you doing? She enters a phone conversation like Kramer enters a room on Seinfeld. Dad, my phone is blowing up. My friends in college said you were seen on CNN. What's going on? Well, I wasn't on CNN, but I was at UAH. Shortly after 4 p.m. on Friday, the 12th of 2010, a teacher in the Anatomy and Neurosciences department was attending a faculty meeting, and at that meeting, she was denied tenure. At the end of the meeting, the teacher removed a Ruger P95 9mm handgun and shot 6 faculty members. She killed 3 and wounded 3. My pager went off, and I responded to the scene without much information. It was a SWAT call out. I got on campus, and among the things that I did, I spoke to many traumatized people that day, and including a lady who was in the room where the shooting took place. I had been working with people in a line. They were sitting in chairs in a hallway, and I was talking to them one at a time, taking them into a little anteroom and speaking to them. It was my turn to be done, and I went outside and I sat in what I thought was an empty hallway. And at the far end of the hallway, in the dimly lit corner, I saw a lady sitting by herself, and I approached her. And she didn't have a 1,000-yard stare. She was staring off into infinity. She was in shock. As we began to talk, she had been in the room. The pistol had been placed on her forehead and had said click instead of bang. It had failed to fire. She was in that place where your mind is rational and irrational at the same time. And she was struggling with the fact that why she couldn't have stopped it, why she couldn't disarm a lady with a gun. And I asked her when she earned her black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and she had not had a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu. So we determined it wasn't her job or responsibility to take the gun away from someone. I spoke with her a long, long time, and finally connected her to family members, and they came to campus and took her home. That moment was not captured on CNN. And until now, there are only ever 2 people who ever knew about it. If, that's a big if I was on CNN, I was dressed like a civilian and was wearing maybe a windbreaker that had Chaplin on it, I wasn't wearing any body armor, and I definitely wasn't running any buildings. And my role there that day was not looking for or dealing with the shooter, but was simply the ministry of presence in dealing with the traumatized. If, and that's a very big if I was on CNN, it was because Mark McMurray had called me to him and pointed out a distinguished-looking lady standing in front of the door of the building where the shootings had taken place, and simply said, you need to go get her out of here. You need to remove her from the scene. And I said, well, why me? He said, because she's trying to enter a crime scene, and it'll look really, really bad on CNN if guys in body armor or black uniforms drag her off. Her spouse lay dead in the building. And in a part of her mind, she was afraid he was cold, and she wanted to go into the building and place a coat on him. She told him to wear his coat that day. The human mind can separate realities in times of intense trauma. I softly explained to her that the men in the building would treat everyone with dignity, and there wasn't anything that they needed that wouldn't be done for them. And I gently placed my hand on her elbow and, speaking in a very low tone, began to walk away. My voice was so soft that she had to walk with me in order to hear me. And there, in front of the cameras, surrounded by the people, we left the front entrance of the crime scene. And if the moment was captured on CNN, I assure you it was not broadcast. So how did I end up on CNN? Well, actually, it wasn't me. I wasn't on CNN. It was a guy named Chad Smith. Chad was running toward the building wearing body armor but no helmet. People who have never seen Chad and have only seen me maybe once or twice could easily have made the mistake and quote unquote seen me running across campus toward that building. And that's probably what everyone who saw me saw when they say they saw me on CNN. But I wasn't. Now, before I wasn't on CNN, I had met Chad Smith. I met Chad Smith before he was on CNN. I met Chad Smith before he was a cop and before he was a SWAT cop. We met at a retreat at the Gunnersville Church of Christ at some camp that we'd gone to. I was the guest speaker, and he was one of the students in attendance. I think he was 15 years old. Yeah, I was very young, and he was younger than I was. And since that time, we have become good friends. I have grappled with him. I've trained with him. I played volleyball with him. I've been a guest in his home, and he and Susan have been guests in our home. He helped me with my kitchen remodel. He rode to Georgia with me on multiple occasions to help me build the treehouse zombie fort for the Minions. Chad, Tim Rhodes, and I moved an 800-gallon water tank with 2 ropes and a Muntner hitch and a knuckle boom loader. We've had lots of adventures together. He introduced me to The Chosen. I was at his house the night that Matt Hughes beat Hoist Gracie on the UFC. We watched that fight together. But most importantly, Chad Smith taught me how to have conversations about Jesus. Now, you'd think that's an odd thing for a minister to say somebody taught him. You see, I've sat in small groups where Chad led the conversation. And that's exactly what Chad's gift is. He leads conversations about Jesus. He doesn't do lessons. He doesn't give sermons. He doesn't give devotional talks. He has conversations about Jesus. And at age 15, he changed me as a parent before I was a parent. Among the things I learned from him, the first thing I learned from him was what I call conversational spirituality. I learned it from him when he was a student at a retreat that I was the speaker at. Now, you got to understand, in your ministry, you go through stages. And there are stages when nobody knows you, and they hear you speak, and they say, hey, one of these days you're going to be a fine speaker. Then you have this stage where you speak somewhere and people walk out and say, I remember when you were a really, really good speaker. You've never reached the place where you're a good speaker. But there's also that thing where you age. At my age now, I show up at a camp or show up at a retreat or show up at some event, and they go, Brother Jones, we have a private cabin for you that has soundproof rooms and an air conditioner. Would you like to go there? But in those days, in the days when you're young, you pull up on campus and they go, hey, Lonnie, we're so glad you're here. We've got you a bed reserved in the boys' bunkhouse. The boys' bunkhouse. You're the guest speaker. And they're going to house you in a room with no walls or partitions, with just bunks stacked to the ceiling with a bunch of teenage boys. And teenage boys like to play pranks. They like to harass people. That's just the nature of teenage boy culture. And so you go in as the guest speaker. Now, if you're going to be the guest speaker and you're going to be housed in the room with the animals, what you've got to do is you've got to find the top bunk. That top bunk should be in a corner. That way there's only one way to approach. It's kind of like Thermopylae. If they come after you in the night, they can only come in one way. There's one way in, one way out. I usually walk into the bunk with my gear, throw my gear on the top bunk. I climb up on the top bunk and start unpacking my gear, dramatically displaying a large knife that I'm not supposed to bring to camp anyway, but I always do. And then you take the knife and you tie it upside down from a rafter in the ceiling. And then you lie down and you raise up and you grab the handle of the knife. And you lie down and you raise up and you grab the handle of the knife. And you do this sufficiently till there's enough boys looking at you. And then you slowly look around the cabin and say, if you boys will be quiet, I probably won't have a flashback tonight. And then you lie down and you go to sleep and nobody says a word. So I'm on the top bunk, having gone through the knife flashback ritual. The lights are out. It's well past midnight, and I hear this voice. Hey, Lonzo. It's a trap. If you look over the edge of the bed, something will reach up and grab you, just like sleeping at home with your feet uncovered. You don't want the thing under the bed to grab you. But I'm laying there in the dark, and I hear, Lonzo. So I respond with, what? And it's this young man, Chad Smith. And Chad says, I need to ask you something. So I leaned cautiously over the edge of the bunk and I asked him what it was he needed to ask me at 1 a.m. in the morning. And he simply said, I usually ask people what their favorite Bible verse is, and I forgot to ask you. And I crawled off the bunk and I sat down on the concrete floor with a little bit of dirt on it, and I turned on my flashlight. And I said, well, it kind of depends on the stage of life I'm in, kind of depends on what's going on. But at this point in time, this is my favorite verse. And he told me his and why. And then lights came on, flashlights. And a group of boys gathered and sat on a dirt concrete floor and began to talk about the Bible with the same comfortableness, with the same ease that somebody would talk about NASCAR or baseball. And we just had a conversation about spirituality. And so many times I think in the religious world, we have confrontational spirituality, but we don't have conversational spirituality. And conversational spirituality is just this moment I had with this young 15-year-old where he simply asked me a question, and it wasn't a theological question. It was just simply a personal question. Moses would tell the children of Israel in what we call the Shema, Hear, O Israel. He would say, you put this in your heart. And once it's in your heart, you impress it on your children. Now, here's how you impress it on your children. You talk about these things when you sit at home, when you walk on the road, when you go to bed, when you get up. You bind them as symbols on your hands and on your foreheads. You write them on the doorpost and the door frames of your house and on your gates. Conversational spirituality is when you have this organic movement in your house where you talk about the things that are important. And I see this in lots of houses, and it's not just about biblical stuff. I see discussions about integrity and patriotism and responsibility and respect and being a good dad and being a good husband. But it's not a thing where you sit down and say, I'm going to give you a lesson. It's the lessons that you're taught as you lie down and as you walk and as you rise up, and the things that you put on your bracelets and your ball cap and your T-shirt and the tag on your car and the flag in your yard. I know a lot of people want their family to have this spiritual orientation, but we struggle with it because it's not organic. It's not conversational. It's staged. I often ask people in parenting classes, anybody here ever struggle with a family devotional? And family devotional is where you're supposed to get your family together and for a few minutes focus on these religious or spiritual things. Well, a family devo ends up looking like a miniature church service. The family gathers around the hearth, and mom is sitting there, and Johnny's sitting there, and Susie's sitting there, and dad stands up and says, well, welcome to family devo. And I guess, maybe we should make some announcements. The dog needs to be fed, and probably the trash should be emptied in the foyer. And then maybe we should move to prayer request. Johnny will be in need of prayers if his algebra grade doesn't pick up. And then all of a sudden, we think that having a family devotional is having a miniature church service, and it's not a miniature church service. Moses didn't tell these people to go home and recreate tabernacle in their house. Moses says you make it organic. It's conversational. You're sitting down, you talk about this stuff. Why? It's on your heart. You go to bed, you talk about this stuff. Why? It's on your heart. You get up in the morning and you begin to talk about this stuff. Why? Because it's on your heart. If you have an opportunity to talk about it when you're walking on the way, and you have a sign on your door and a sign on your gate, and you have it on a flag in your yard, and all of a sudden, this thing that we do as Christians, as spiritual people, it's on our bracelets, it's on our T-shirts, it's on our ball cap, it's on the tag on our car, it's on the flag in our yard, it's on the posters in our office. And what that creates is a devoted family. And a devoted family is way more important than a family devotion. See, when these things become intertwined and part of your life, you have a spiritual subculture. You don't have this compartmentalization where church is this thing we do on Sundays or Wednesdays. But talking about God and God being a part of our lives and us being a part of a godly life is just what we do. It's part of our meals, it's part of our rituals, it's part of our routines, it's part of our vacations, it's part of our trips. You put on your t-shirt, on your ball cap, on your bracelet, on your mailbox, on the flag in your yard, the tag on your car, when you're sitting down, when you're going to bed, when you're getting up, when you're driving to school. Now, I like to pray with my family. We've had family prayers, and we pray at our meals, and sometimes we have dedicated times where we would sit down and pray about important things. But you know what's more important than that is, rather than having family prayers, having a family of prayers. And you notice prayer, P-R-A-Y-E-R, and prayer, P-R-A-Y-E-R, it's spelled exactly the same way. But someone who says a prayer, listens to a prayer, participates in a prayer, versus a person who is a prayer, one who prays, that's way, way different. You see, you just put this poster on the wall. You put a whiteboard on your fridge. You take a piece of paper and you laminate it, and then you can write on it in a Sharpie marker, and you can change it and erase it with nail polish remover. And you just simply say, hey, when you guys pray this week, I've got this meeting at work I want you to pray about. Hey, when you say your prayers this week, whether it's at your meals or whether it's before you go to bed, when you're by yourself and you're praying alone, I've got this guy that I work with and I'm having a problem with. I want you to pray about this. And you just put a poster up. You just put a sign up. You put a whiteboard up, and you have Mom and Dad and Johnny and Susie, and Dad writes on his list, this is what I want you to pray about. And then Mom writes on her list what she wants you to pray. And at some point in time, maybe, just maybe, Johnny and Susie will say, well, by the way, I want you to pray about this. And I like to pray with you, but I also like to just have the assumption that you pray, that you're a member of our household, and not only will you pray with me, but you'll pray for me, and you pray when you're not with me, and you pray when I can't see you. See, some of these things can be staged. Devotion can be staged. A lesson can be rehearsed. But when you create a spiritual subculture in your family, then you have this organic discussion about God. It's in the normal context of everyday life. And that's more important, because your everyday life then reflects what's actually important. And then it becomes encultured, and it becomes authentic. Jesus said, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. If it is not in our heart, then all the staged family things won't translate. If it stays in the building and never shows up on our bracelets, on our t-shirts, on our ball caps, on our car tags, on the flags in our yard, and in the discussions when we sit down and we lie down and we rise up, and when we're walking and when we're driving, when we go to bed, if it's not in our heart, it will not appear on our posters, on our walls, the tags on our cars, the flag in our yard. And even when it does appear in our hearts, it will not appear on CNN. But the important stuff is not always on CNN. It's what's on your heart that gets broadcast. Using the tool of shortwave radio, World Christian Broadcasting literally covers the world every day with the gospel. They use 2 large curtain antennas. One is located in Anchor Point, Alaska, and the other in Madagascar. They send out messages that are recorded at their international home in Franklin, Tennessee. They make available 40 hours of broadcast every day. The broadcasts are made in English, Chinese, Russian, Spanish, Portuguese, Korean, English for Africa, and Arabic. They would love for your group to visit them. You can bring your ladies group, your youth group, or your men's group. Just give them a call at 615-371-8707, 615-371-8707, or you can go to 3W's and a dot, worldchristian.org, find the Donate Here button, and make a financial contribution to support this work that literally covers the world every day with the gospel. World Christian Broadcasting, in cooperation with Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure.